Hey there, Hannah. So, this is a two-part question. And you do seem to have understood not only how to respond to this question, but also you've tackled the fact that this is a question of what should happen, what ought to happen. What normally happens with students tackling this question is that they think that it's asking about what has happened, what is already the case. And while that needs to be discussed, this really is about what should happen in the future. I would think that is necessary in modern societies. Brings tremendous value for the human intellect. I see what you're trying to say, but it's not quite specific enough. So if we were to say it brings tremendous value for human intellectual potential, we could say new gadgets or emerging gadgets, so things that are coming up now. But overall, I actually really like that introduction. It takes a complex subject and it cuts it down into its simplest terms, which is actually very good. So I'm just going to trim the words down a little bit. This bit's implied, we don't really need. It's adaptation. To adapt. Adaptation. So instead of this, because we know that it's about technical solutions, so we know it's about using modern technology. Or in just a couple of clicks or through just a couple of clicks would be better. Don't talk about what people don't do. Talk about what people do. Cool. The progression of that paragraph is good. But there is no supporting example. It is a hypothetical example, but we could frame that as a more formal example by saying that maybe a recent study by Cambridge University found that a large proportion of people who paid little attention to technology had low quality jobs and lower income on average than those who kept up to date. So we want to have this quantified example. We want to really be able to explain to people that I do have a sound basis for my reasoning. And that usually comes from a real world quantified example. Because this is kind of a generalization as well. We should say at least somewhat. So what we could say here is just, and it should be technological devices. Bring almost unlimited access to information and knowledge. These are the same thing. So let's just stick to one of them. Okay, so what we could as well do here people is the plural. So possessive plural of people is apostrophe S there. If we're just going to end the sentence there, this would be better as a such as, actually. So, should technology adapt to people? Is technology making us more intelligent? Yes, you have answered that question with these paragraphs, but I did need to remove a few unnecessary bits and bobs. If we just have a quick look over at the mark scheme, what's really important in this section is that the student addresses all parts of the task. That the position is clear, that the main ideas are extended and supported, and you are allowed to generalize a little bit. So I really do believe that you did fall into this category. I did have to remove quite a lot, but this would have hurt this score more than it would have hurt this one. You do logically organize your information, and it does have a cohesive flow. You do use paragraphing sufficiently and appropriately. You are moving into this group here. So you're, I think you're still here, but you shouldn't find it too difficult to come up here. You're quite strong here as well, except for the fact that you tend to use too many words to express a point. This is about precision. These bits here, this is just more about your vocabulary knowledge. So there's very limited scope to extend that as part of this course. But using your vocabulary precisely is something you can practice. In order to really, the main problem in grammar for most people is this: if you want to get a band 8, you're only allowed to make a very, very, very few errors, and you have to have the majority of your sentences perfect. To get a band 7, you need to have frequent perfect sentences. So even this is quite difficult. But I believe that you should be aiming for 8 here, 8 here. I think you should be aiming for a 7.5 after these corrections. Like at the moment, you're probably just about scraping a 7. Some mean examiner might give you a 6.5. But I think you should be aiming for a 7.5. I think that would be quite easy to achieve from these corrections. If we want to go further than that, you'll have to let me know, but then I'm sure we can devise a solution. But over the next, it should be quite easy for you to bump up to the 7.5 because you find this quite easy. You find this quite easy. You don't really make many mistakes here. There's a few, but they'll come on. But just cutting down the word count would boost you up here. But I'm going to move on to your task 1, actually. We can't really talk about the nationalities of the people because the graph just tells us where they came from, which is where they flew from. It doesn't tell us where they were born. I know this sounds like a pedantic point, but I do make it quite often. So we should just say from 3, and if we want to be specific, North American countries in 2018. So this is actually really good. Well done for sticking to the predicted number of visits and not saying what it will be, but instead talking about what it's expected to be. Ooh, past tense. So we should change all these nationalities. But I'm just going to do it there to show you what I mean. I'm not going to change every single one of those. We use commas to separate our thousands of units. And again, visitors from, tourists from, people coming from America. Once again, people from Mexico. But because we're switching the subject, actually no, we could do it like that. We could do it either way, it would be acceptable. But we must, I think it would be advisable even to stick to people from, tourists from, rather than talking about Americans and Mexicans. So we could say here, the number of people travelling to Madrid from the USA and Mexico. Oops. The number of people travelling to Madrid from the USA and Mexico. Okay, that's where I got it wrong. The numbers of people are expected to be similar, with 70,000 from each. It is by far the most likely destination for people travelling from Mexico. Again, people from Canada. Here I would have said, on the other hand, oh wait, what were we talking about? Madrid. So on the other hand, Madrid is predicted to receive only, was it 30,000? I think it was, but whatever the number was, visitors from Mexico. Are expected to, for this country of origin, people from Mexico, tourists from America, 60,000 and 20,000 visits, respectively. Again, we can't talk about what they have little interest in. We can only talk about the number of people who are expected to travel. So the frequency of visitation. We can't talk about what they're interested in or what their favourite things are. Is it the second most popular destination for both? It would be both tourists from America and Canada. Or tourists from both America and Canada. And also, actually, we wouldn't say America, we would have to say the USA, because in different parts of the world, America means different things. So in some places it just means North America. In some places it just means South America. In some places it means the USA. And in some places it means both continents. So we can't really say Americans. So we have to say tourists from the USA, etc. So with this, the things that were missing here were just the correct tense, if you will. The formatting of the numbers. There was a tendency to talk about what people prefer or what people like, rather than objectively describing the data. When we look at the data, we have numbers, we have frequencies, but we don't have preferences. We must really think about, in these task ones, what information we actually have from the graph, because we must not add any extra information in that's opinion. Opinion is not welcome here. So never use words like surprisingly or interestingly, because that's not objective. But I'll send this over to you now before this video gets too long and ranty. But I think that, yeah, we're looking at overall these two responses together probably would have been a 6.5, only just below a 7. But I think that given what's holding you back, they're actually quite easy problems to solve. So I don't think it's going to be too much of a stress to jump through these bands here and end up here. But once again, I'll send this over to you now. Have a great day, Hannah. Bye-bye.